When you left New York, then did you come back to New Mexico then?
I came to New Mexico because of my brother and sister not ever getting together on what they were going to tell me. And Phyllis would say that my parents were doing real well and everybody was real well. And then Victor said now that my dad is having to take radiology, and he said he's getting radium and cobalt treatments. He said he's doing a lot better, and I think Chen has told you this. Chen was Phyllis. He used to nickname her that way. And I thought, my gosh, why is he taking cobalt? And I got real scared. And it turned out that he had cancer of the esophagus. Oh, I just got petrified, at the time when I began to get these messages. So guess what I did? I went to Dr. Fisher and I showed him what had been written to me, and I told him that I wanted to come back to New Mexico. He said, but you're under contract. He said, the council has to okay whatever. But anyway, he was the director, so he could do it if he wanted to. And I guess he listened to me, and sure enough, in about a day or two, he had everything set so I could get my, what they called a summer pay and a little bit of retirement pay, which was hardly nothing. But it helped me to get, to come home. And I got all my courage, and I got on the train, the Sunset Limited, and I came home. And they weren't even expecting me until I called them from somewhere and told them I was on the way to. So Victor and Phyllis went to TRC because they said, well, get on the bus in Albuquerque. We'll meet you in TRC. When I got to TRC, I was just really petrified for my dad because I saw all of these relatives. Frank Trujillo's dad, Ventura, was standing by Victor and Phyllis, and my uncle Mariano, who was my dad's oldest brother, was standing. And you were talking about Eugene Montoya? Okay, Eugene Montoya's dad was there, and the worst thoughts came into my mind that something had happened to my dad. But no, it was just that they met Phyllis and Victor in town, and they told them why they were there. So they went to stand there by the bus, it's typical of relatives, family. Then Phyllis said, let's go to Barnes. And she said, I have to take my mother, I don't remember what. But as we were walking there come Miss Elkins and Miss Welty. And they were real glad to see me, and we had a big reunion, and they said, couldn't you go teach in Monticello? We can't find nobody, because there are no facilities, and you know what we mean, they said.
No living facilities, right?
And no bathrooms. That's what they hated the most. I have to go to the outhouse. And knowing me, they thought that I'd think nothing of that, I guess. And I said, but when do you need me? I said, I haven't even seen my parents. And Ms. Elkins said, well, she said, as soon as you can. And Ms. Welty said, yes, as soon as you can. They were, one was the superintendent, the other one was the bookkeeper, assistant, whatever, and this is the way they both worked. And they didn't question my credentials. They didn't say that I had to have a transcript. Just that I'd say that I was willing to go. And this was like a Thursday. Mind you, on Monday I was in Monticello High School looking at all the dismal surroundings.
And using an outhouse. You'd come from New York City to an outhouse.
And guess what they said? You could live by Effie Barnes. They said there are rooms there next to her. And it's that old house of the Montoyas that has the white porch. And it was really very pretty at that time yet. And I was supposed to live on the north end. And it had a wood stove, a heater in the living room, 2 beds, and a table, a rough table with rough chairs and 2 benches. And, and a little thing to hold water and whatever. And a little closet of sorts on a corner. And I remember taking Teresa, my sister, to be with me. And Teresa looked at everything, and she didn't say anything, but you could tell that she wondered, well, gee, how are we going to do, what are we going to do here? And she too wondered, but she wouldn't say anything. And I remember that wood had been taken in, so I would have wood and everything. And I knew all about that, so that didn't worry me. And so Monday morning I appeared at the high school, and guess who was my principal? Mr. Farmer, who had helped me graduate, you know. He had come back there after the war, and he and his wife lived in the church house, the rectory, and were very happy there. They were close to retirement and wanted to finish their last years there, I guess. So in a way I was at home with them, and I don't know what kind of errors I made. I did a lot of foolish mistakes teaching, but they forgave me because they knew me.
How many students did you have?
At that time there were like 69 students in the high school and like 44 students in the lower grades.
And what year was that?
Then it began to diminish more and more. Let's see, this was before it was about 1946, something like that. And the second year I was there, I remember that what made the high school were GIs, boys that were had come back from the service and had the GI Bill, and they didn't lack but 1 or 2 credits, and usually it was math or history to finish. So guess what Mr. Farmer said? You and I will take them, he said, and help them so that they'll have their diploma. And after 4 o'clock, I would teach world history or American history, and he'd teach the math. And some of those men now are they've died, like David Romero and John Romero and Jacob Candelaria and Cornelio Baca. They've passed away. But guess what they did? They were in earnest, and they got their diplomas. And then guess where they went to work? To Fort Baird at the hospital there. A whole bunch of them. So when Jim had that horrid experience of having to go first time to Fort Baird, to the Veterans Hospital, and I took him in, I was like in second heaven. All of these boys took good care of Jim, no matter the state of affairs.
Because they had remembered how you had helped them.
I don't know, but I mean, there was something very rewarding about what I had done, but I didn't, at the time I hadn't really thought of it until the time when we went to the Veterans Hospital.
Now when were you at Monticello High when they closed it?
No, Frank Trujillo. He was the principal.
And
I had been married by then, like 2 or 3 years, I guess.
And you had moved.
And well, when I married, I resigned, and I don't remember the name of the man who took my place. And Mr. Farmer and Mrs. Farmer left there, and there was a whole new bunch of teachers. And Frank went there as a principal. And I remember that he fussed a lot about the village, whatever, but I guess he survived until they closed it.
And then when you left there, did you teach immediately again?
No. Soon after I moved to Garfield, Jim and I had a little old adobe house by the curb, but close to the river, and it had a little arbor, and no neighbors close by, and no dangers of trucks or farm implements or whatever, so my kids could really roam and play without my being worried about them. It was really a nice area. Now you wouldn't know it. It's all level land and field, because whoever bought that land later turned the trees over and they plowed it and leveled it. So all I remember is where the house was, but it was really a neat adobe house, and we kind of remodeled it a little, and that's where my kids were born, all 3 of them. And I stayed with them 6-7 years till Rita till Rita was old enough to walk around, but she couldn't go to kindergarten yet. And then Mr. Deppenbrink said, could you come to Garfield and help me? He said, for at least 6 weeks, he said, because this woman was to have surgery. And I told him, well, gee, I have to think about it because Rita's so little. And Jim's mother lived in this house, and she said, oh, I'll take care of Majita. You know, she was used to Rita. And so she said, don't worry, and whenever I have to go somewhere, she said, you can have her with your mom and dad, and she'll be all right. And she was. She was just as happy with him as she was with Grandma Gonzalez. Mm-hmm. So then I would spend a lot of time here with Grandma Gonzalez because of Rita or my other kids having to be here with her evenings. I guess I always thought after that, because Mr. Deppenbrink wanted me to teach in the grade school in Garfield, and Mr. Linton said, no, we need a teacher at the high school. And then he said, no, we need a special teacher for these kids that need help in reading. And he said, I think you could help them. Aren't you willing to do that for a year? So they put me in Hatch Elementary, and I didn't know any of the kids, were unknown to me. And later I found out, by Christmas time, I found out that they were kids from all the way from 1st, 2nd, 3rd grade repeaters that couldn't get the reading. Mm-hmm. And they all ended up being called 3rd grade. And that's what I was teaching. I don't know that I advanced them in the way that they might have liked. I don't know that I helped them as much as they would have liked. But I know one thing, that they're all very useful citizens today, and I see them around, and they're doing all right. They went on with their schooling, and later when I was at the high school in Hatch, then there they came by my doors again, so I got to see them and be with them again. And the only tragic note of that bunch is that like 6 of those young kids died real young. Either kind of tragic deaths. Frankie Bustamante, they said, was killed by someone in Albuquerque when he got his first job and went there. And Bobby Montes was killed by someone too in Albuquerque. And Louis Oliver, who used to not far from me, he was a cop and got killed in Albuquerque. And then 2 or 3 of the others died around here. But quite a number of those kids that were all with me at the beginning died young. And it's one of the tragedies that I saw happen.